The ego, which is what we identify ourselves to be so strongly, and the ego's job is to protect us from the pain that we learn to control and never want to feel again. Firstly, if we can just be aware of that conditioning and be aware of our egoic resistance and not judge it, this way of holding on and trying to control everything is my ego's way of just trying to keep me safe. And if we can then understand the positive intention and maybe begin to meet ourselves with that light of grace and mercy and compassion.
What I found is that there's a real correlation in the world between the willingness to hear what it is that I'm saying and all its implications.
Yeah.
It directly seems to correlate with how much someone has suffered. Yes. And I don't want to increase anybody's suffering. But sometimes I think that's what's needed.
No, you don't have to increase the suffering, because often when someone is suffering or in such a level of pain, the egoic holding on, we're just not able to hold on, and God brings us to, sometimes life has to bring us to our knees to force us to let go and force us to be open to like healing, therapy, a different way, listening to Jeff saying, okay, I'm willing to, like, I don't know everything, help me. And so sometimes God has to bring us to our knees so that we can be available to a different path and truly surrender. And so I think if we're able to surrender without getting brought to our knees, great. The quicker we can do that, great. And then we don't have to be brought to our knees. But the challenge is the ego, which is what we identify ourselves to be so strongly, right, is what we think ourselves to be. The ego's job is to reinforce its sense of existence.
Right.
And the ego's job is to protect us from the pain that we learn to control and never want to feel again. So now we go through life like, I'm never gonna freaking feel that pain when I was 5 again. And that's why we hold on so tightly. And so I think firstly, if we can just be aware of that conditioning and be aware of our egoic, resistance and not judge it, because many times people say, ego's the enemy, ego's bad, ego's wrong. Ego is just a process of identification. And so if we can just be aware of that, the job of the ego, the nature of the ego, how it comes about, and even just have some compassion, like, wow, like this way of holding on and not being open, this way of holding on and trying to control everything, this way of holding on, not being open to a different way, it is my ego's way of just trying to keep me safe. And if we can then understand the positive intention and maybe begin to meet ourselves with that light of grace and mercy and compassion, then we can also shift our relationship to this survival mechanism and not have to hold on as much and beat ourselves up, and just that can loosen. But yeah, it's often not the case, and it's often we have to get beat down until we're like, I can't do it anymore. Okay, I'll finally listen to the universe. I'll finally get help from someone. And so it would be great. It would be great if that didn't have to be the case. But I don't think that you and I have to, give someone more suffering.
Yeah, of course.
Life will give them more suffering.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
I would go so far as say I'm a personal development nerd. It's like, if people are like, what are your hobbies? It'd be like piano, working out, reading. And like, I would actually say like personal development. It's like it's a thing that I, the way like some guys work on cars, I like to work on my brain and my soul and whatever. So I'm really excited about this conversation, and I appreciate the work that you do very much. You have maybe a good place to start. You have a new book out. Right?
Yes. Yeah. The new book is, it's actually coming out in paperback. It's been out a moment now. It's called The Magic of Surrender, Finding the Courage to Let Go. So something I'm really excited about, especially given the times that we're in, a theme that I'm very excited about. So yes.
Yeah, I love that, that concept of surrender. We actually talk a lot about that in internally in my company, Entre. We have a series of personal growth events that we actually do. And that's so much of what we work on for people, is just surrendering. And I agree with you. It's really timely. I also just want to give you a compliment real quick. So I was looking at your book on Amazon, and, most like, look, you're great at what you do. It's not surprising. You have a lot of good reviews, but you have no bad reviews. Literally,
really, I haven't even checked, to be honest.
Yeah, not one person has been like upset by anything you wrote, and I feel like
wow.
that speaks to something, because and I read a lot of personal development. I study a lot about it. I write a lot about it. I have a book coming out that's quasi, I guess, probably about 50% in that camp. But in looking at the competition, what you find is that people have different kind of polarized opinions. There's like two groups of people in this world: people that believe that they can do stuff and that like it's within the realm of their control to influence the course of their life. And then there's like these other people that they're like dogmatically negative, and it like offends them, this idea that they actually are in control. And a lot of times whenever I look at reviews for personal development books, there always seem to be a few of the latter camp that just like have a bone to pick. And somehow you've managed to appease all those people too. So your book I haven't read it, but it must be like very approachable.
Yeah, it's, I think, written in a very simple way, because I didn't want to write a personal development book that was so, hoity-toity, highfalutin, and no one freaking read. What's the point? Because then you can't apply it in your life. It doesn't transform your life. So I wanted to write it in a way that was very simple, that literally a 12-year-old, 10-year-old, 14-year-old could read, and you could immediately apply. Otherwise, there's no point to having an intelligent book that's great that nobody reads.
Well, I agree with you. I think that's very astute, but not all personal development authors approach it that way. There's a lot of very, like you say, kind of highfalutin, very neuroscience and, very dense conversation. I'd love to hear, whenever I talk to people that do transformational or personal development type of work, I always like to hear, because it's a space that has, I think, a very subjective definition and a lot of subjectivity around it, people's opinions about it, people's definitions of it, people's experiences of it. So I'm curious, as a starting point, how do you define personal development?
How do I define personal development?
And I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Yeah,
how would you explain it to somebody that's like, I don't know if I want to get into that?
Just a process of, I like to explain things simply. And so if someone asks me, what is personal development? It is developing yourself, really, your mind, your body, your emotions, your physiology. It is the process of consciously and actively improving your psychology, your spirit, your emotion, your relationship of life, so that you can progressively move forward in life. It's the process of developing yourself, and I think ultimately we're souls. The way I look at things is from a spiritual level, first and foremost. We are souls. We incarnate into this human experience. We incarnate into this human experience because there are certain lessons that we are here to learn and grow through and evolve through. And so the way I see things is life is a school and life is a university. And every experience, every situation, every breakup, every bankruptcy, every challenge ultimately is part of the curriculum in the university of life for our soul's evolution. And so for me, the purpose of life is not just to wake up, make money, be successful, buy a car, go on vacation, and then die. Like for me, the purpose of life, as I see it from a soul perspective, is to learn, to grow, to evolve, to learn the lessons for why we attract certain situations, and to become and to realize the true essence, the true nature of what we are beyond our conditioning. And so I think the process of personal development helps us develop ourselves and learn lessons and learn about ourselves. So hopefully we can realize our true nature as souls, true nature as pure essence, true nature beyond just this mind-body mechanism and beyond our limited conditioning. Because I think so much from the moment we're born, we're constantly programmed from media, from religion, from society, from parents, from grandparents, from everyone around us, and I think media and the mainstream, so to speak, social media, has no interest in you and I being free, has no interest in you and I knowing who we truly are, has no interest in you and I knowing our true essence. Because when we know as human beings who we really are, when we know what we truly are, which is beyond our conditioning, beyond just this mind, body, physical thing that we are conditioned and hypnotized and seduced to believe, when we truly know who we really are as infinite beings, then we are free. Then we can't just be manipulated and controlled by fear-based tactics and by society and what have you. And so I think, personal development, if you want to call it that, personal growth, self-help, ultimately spirituality is the process of knowing who you are. Really, that's at the core. And I think there's levels to personal development. There's developing your sort of personality. And I think a lot of personal development has been based on personality manipulation, development, rearrangement, which is all helpful, be a better self. The challenge is if we only stay at the level of the personal development, we don't necessarily staying at the level of personal development often stays at the level of the I, the person. But that's limited in a sense because we often don't ask, well, who is the I? What is the source of the I? What is the true I, right? And so I think there comes a moment where we have to go beyond personal development and question, like, who am I really? And who is the I that I'm developing? And where does the I arise from? And that's when it goes to a deeper dimension of spirituality, however people access it. But that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
But,
it's so interesting. I appreciate your answer. See, I knew you'd have a good answer for that question. So I'm glad I started there. It's so interesting. My son is 17.
Wow.
And do you have kids?
Not yet.
Not yet. Oh, you have a whole world of adventures to look forward to. So my wife and I, we try to be like the cool house. But we try to be the cool house that doesn't feel like we're trying to be the cool house. We're just like the cool house, And so one of the things, so we've been very intentional. We have 4 kids, 19, 17, 13, and 5.
Amazing.
And as our teenagers have gotten older, we set a real strong intention that like we didn't want to be up all night on Friday and Saturday night worrying about where our kids were. Like, what are they doing? Are they safe? And so we made a decision in our parenting journey that's like, we're going to be those laid back parents that allow the party to happen at our house. Because look, kids are going to do what they're going to do, and they're either going to hide it from you or they're going to disclose it to you, depending on how open you are with them and how much you treat them like, like a friend, but also them knowing that you have their back as an adult when you need to, right? But not like always heavy-handed parenting and control. Like we're not that. But anyway, the reason I tell you this is so we have a really open dialogue with our kids about life, about what they're doing, about what they're thinking. And my son said something to me. My 17-year-old son said something to me. I guess it was Saturday. No, maybe it was yesterday. I think it was yesterday. Which was Sunday. We're recording this on a Monday about a party that they had at the house Saturday night. And I crashed out. I get up really early, so I always fall asleep in the middle of their parties and whatever. And he was like, Dad, the reason why I was talking to him about what is it about partying? Like it, and he's like, Dad, the thing is, like, we recognize that this is the freest, this is kind of the end of us really getting to be this free. And he's 17, right? Going into his senior year. And he's like, from here, it's just, life is just going to be this like progressive loss of freedom from now till the end. And I was like, man, that is actually, when you put it that way, that is really sad, but I also can't really argue with him. When you're 16, 17 years old, that's about as free as you get, because you have the mobility and the opportunities of being almost an adult, but you don't actually have the obligations and even the consequences of being an adult. Yeah. And then it's like, life is just this steady decline of freedoms. And I was like, man, that really hits hard. So I feel like what you're saying is that there's actually a way that you can reconnect with and even expand your freedoms as an adult.
It depends how you define freedom. And I think in our culture today, sadly, we've defined freedom as money. Nothing wrong with money. I'm not anti-money. I hope everybody makes $1 billion, to be honest. But we have limitedly defined, in limited fashion, defined freedom as, money and fame and success on a material level. And so now we're chasing this idea or this preconceived idea of what we think in the world, in the rat race, is going to get us freedom. And so here we are chasing it, burning out, chasing it, frustration, chasing it, stressing, chasing it, having nervous breakdowns, chasing this idea of freedom out there in the world. if I make enough money, if I get that perfect body, if I can get that Lamborghini, if I can get 14 Lamborghinis, if I can get, then I'm going to be free. And then we achieve that thing that we thought was going to get us that sense of freedom. And then we don't feel any more free. Now we end up feeling a slave to the thing that now we've attained that we thought was going to get us freedom, or now we achieve it. I've worked with a lot of billionaires over the last 10, 15 years. And, there's nothing worse than achieving the thing that you thought was going to bring you happiness and freedom, only to realize, well, I don't feel any more happy or free ultimately in the long run, because at least when you're chasing it, you have the illusion that it's going to give you freedom. But when you achieve it and the reality sets in that it doesn't. And so I like to say, look, there's no real freedom in the external world. Yeah, there's a level of financial freedom, sure. That exists. You have enough money to kind of have a level of freedom to navigate this world however you need to navigate it. But I think there's lots of people that I have worked with that have $4 billion, $7 billion, $100 million, like $20 billion. And they're full of insecurity, full of fear. They are not necessarily free within themselves. And so I think when we really take a step back and question, what is freedom? Freedom ultimately is an inner experience. Look at Mandela. To me, this was a dude that was really free. He did not allow external experiences, external circumstances to determine his internal reality. 26 years in prison, 27 years in prison, comes out. Rather than being used by that time, he uses that time as a personal development opportunity to develop his mind, his body, his emotions, his soul, so that when he came out, he had the soul force to be able to move humanity and fulfill his mission. And so I'm going to propose that he was never really in prison. He found a place of freedom within himself that not even the walls of a prison could contain him. We often think we're free, but the moment we take away someone's cell phone, someone's CEO title, someone's clothing, someone's makeup, someone's handbag, boom, freedom is gone. To me, real freedom is an inner experience. And so I think when we realize that, we start taking the focus off of purely accumulation, achievement, et cetera, and we start developing ourselves so that we can start finding the real freedom. And I think real freedom starts when we begin to question, who am I really? Like, who am I really? And what am I really? And who am I? Am I just this body? Am I just this physical form? Am I just my religion? Am I just my skin color? Am I just my hair? Am I just am I just this physical form? Because I think the degree to which we believe ourselves to be this physical personality, form, body, ego is the degree to which we're identified with our ego, is the degree to which we are not free. Because we're now locked into a sense of identification as this mind body, box of conditioning from the past that we're not free. And I think because many times we're so over-identified as human beings with ourselves as just Kute or Jeff or, whatever we label ourselves, those labels from childhood, we don't feel that sense of freedom. And I think many times because we feel so locked into the prison of personality for a moment, prison of self-identity, prison of ego, not even knowing that we think this is who we are, but we don't know that we're so locked in, which is why many times we are seeking the freedom outside. We want to party, we get addicted, because look, what is an addiction? For a moment, addiction is a way to avoid, to suppress or not feel some pain. But often when we drink, for instance, I have a drink, I do some drugs, I do some heroin, do some cocaine, do some plant medicine, do some get drunk for on a night. It's a loosening of that grip of perceived self-identification of like, wow, I feel looser. I feel free of my self-constraint, self-identification for a moment, and then until the next moment. And so then I have to take another shot, take some more drinks, get drunk again. And so I can get free of my, and so there's no freedom outside. The real freedom, I think, comes in knowing who we are as a soul, knowing who we are as a spirit, knowing who we are beyond our conditioning. The moment we're born, you have 4 kids. This is your hero to me, Jeff. I don't know how you do it. Like, I put you on a pedestal. I worship you. Like, to be a father, to be a husband, it's hard enough to be a husband, but to be a father, to be a husband, to be an entrepreneur and raise 4 kids, that to me is the real success, the real flex. That is the real next level. As children, we are born free. You look into, I'm sure when you looked into your kids' eyes, when they were first born, those first few months before they got conditioned, they were in touch with like divine essence. They were in touch with God. They were in touch with their true souls. They were free. They weren't conditioned. They were just radiating, shining. They would jump on a table and sing and shout and dance, and they would sing. They didn't care if they weren't Bruno Mars or Adele. They would run naked. They didn't care. I'm my fan. What do I look like on Instagram? They were just being whatever they were being. That is the freedom. We were all free at some point, and at the deepest level, no matter what we've been through, we are still all free. Just some of us, we've forgotten the freedom that is inside of at the depth of our being right now. But 2 things happen. The first thing is we were born into this physical environment. We meet our parents who, the parents are just doing the best that they can do based on their childhood and their upbringing. But I think as human beings, we're all born into some level of preset conditioning, right? Maybe dad's an alcoholic, or mom, has a mental health issue, or they're fighting all the time, or they just don't know how to meet our emotional needs. So the first thing that happens is we begin to learn a certain defense mechanism to shut down, disconnect, not feel, shut down, disconnect, not feel, suppress those feelings, suppress those emotions. Layers and layers and layers and layers of unfelt feeling begin to cover up our true freedom, our true self-expression, our true light, our true, magical sense of beingness. And so that gets hidden, and then we contort ourselves into a shape to function and survive so that we don't have to feel the pain again. And now we go through life in this kind of pattern of conditioning so that we never have to feel the pain that we felt when we were 5 or when we were 7, et cetera, et cetera. And so now we're kind of not as free as we were. Like we were like, wow. Now we're like, no, I can't do that, because when I was free, dad went crazy, or mom hit me, or something bad happened and I felt helpless and I don't want to feel that. So now we go through life not as free, in a defensive mechanism position, in order to just survive. And then we also learn as children a way of being, the sense of who do I need to be in order for mom and dad to love me? Oh, I'll be nice, I'll be kind, I'll get all A's. For me, my father was a preacher, so I learned to be the preacher's kid, be responsible, be appropriate, be kind, take care of everyone, get all A's. The whole thing. I wasn't free to just be myself because people would be looking. There was all this pressure. And so we start developing all sorts of roles and masks and personas, that we start contorting ourselves into. We think, here's the thing, we think that's who we are, but it's not. We just learn to get conditioned into that pattern and that way of being to get love, validation, approval, to avoid pain. We think that's who we are, and now we're so conditioned that we can't tell the difference between who we are and who we're not. And we go through life saying, this is me. Now we go through life in this Jeff position, in this Kute position, thinking, this is who I am. I'm just shy. I'm just nice. I'm just independent. I'm just emotionally not connected. And to me, is who you are, who you really are. This is what we have to question. Is who I am, who I really am, or is it who I've been conditioned to be? Because the degree to which we are conditioned and not aware is the degree to which we don't have freedom. We don't have free choice. We react in ways in relationship with our spouses and loved ones, often from defense mechanisms from our childhood, and we're not even conscious of it. So freedom requires awareness that we're conditioned, the willingness to observe our conditioning, the willingness to then feel those feelings that we've suppressed so that we can let them go, and the willingness to question ourselves, which can be very scary, because when we start questioning ourselves, we begin to loosen that conditioning. And so I think freedom is an inner experience of being in touch with our authentic nature and expressing that in the world.
And I love, you gave me that was such a wonderful monologue, if you will. There were 8 different times. I'm like, oh, I need to grab onto that. I need to go dig deeper into that. And now I'm like, man, that was a smorgasbord. But I'll tell you what, I think what really kind of hit me in everything that you just shared is this idea of the child. And I'm thinking about babies, because I am gaga for babies. I just I actually have to check myself and be like, you're a 40-something-year-old man. you can't just go up and like touch people's babies. Like they're precious and they're sacred and they don't belong to you. So, but like I could literally just hold a baby and just be in heaven for like hours. I just,
Wow.
that energy and that possibility and that innocence. And I think the great tragedy of parenting for me, and this kind of goes to what I was saying about my son, is, you know, I think most people, whether, you know, regardless of religious affiliation, I think most people are familiar with the Genesis account, right? That we were naked in the garden, Adam and Eve, and then we ate of the forbidden fruit from the tree of the knowledge, you know, the knowledge of good and evil. And essentially we became self-aware. We became aware of our nakedness. We became aware of our smallness in the light of God. And we became aware of the duality of good and evil and our potential for both, right? And from that came shame and a sort of shrinking. Like if you read the account, right, it's like that's when everything went sideways, right? And I think the great tragedy of parenting is, I remember, I've thought this multiple times, is I'm watching my children fall from grace.
Yeah, get conditioned. Really.
I'm watching them lose their innocence. I'm watching it like when they're born, they are as Adam or as Eve.
Pure.
Walking around naked, having fun, like not a care in the world, not even aware of their own mortality. And then damn it, if these little, and it happens, it's death by 1,000 tiny cuts. They just become aware and you try to stop it, but you can't stop it.
You can't. It's impossible to stop that process of the descent into the human experience.
Yeah.
And part of the process of life is the challenge is many times we get stuck in the illusion of this experience. And a lot of people get stuck in that wake up, go to work, wake up, go to work, wake up, go to work, die. That's it. But I think part of the process of life is become impure. We go around the circle. We lose that innocence. We forget who we are. Most people stop there. Yeah. But I think part of the circle is that return home, that return of awakening. And that's even why I think we have tragedy and suffering in human life, because some of that tragedy, suffering, death, heartbreak is what breaks us open out of that unconsciousness, out of our own forgetfulness, because that pain will sometimes force us to question and go deeper inside of ourselves so that we can wake up and go, oh, maybe that wasn't that important. Maybe I wasn't that. Maybe I am more. Maybe there is more to life. And so it's the return home that I think we are here as human beings to take that journey, the courageous journey.
Hey, sorry for the interruption. I just wanted to let you know you can get a free copy of my book, The Millionaire Shortcut, which will show you the fastest way to become a millionaire in the new economy. And there's a special link just for this episode in the description. So thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. Most religious narratives involve some element of like redemptive teleology, that like we were created to come full circle into some sort of redemptive awareness, right?
Yes.
And that at the macro level, there, you know, the great religious narratives are the narratives of that happening for us as a species. Right.
Yes, yes.
And then at the micro level, it happens. I totally agree with you. Inside of each human life, there's a fall. And then there's an opportunity that comes from, you know, I even made a post the other day, the knowledge of good and evil, so to speak, that comes with the fall, the loss of innocence in every human life. I'm not speaking grand on a religious scale. I'm just talking about Kute and Jeff and anybody else listening. Yeah. We fell. At some point, we fell from grace. We lost our innocence. We became aware. But we have to have that awareness of not only the existence of evil, but even our own capacity for it. And we have to have pain and suffering, because other than perhaps just the hardcore misanthropic sociopath who I don't really have an explanation for most people, evil becomes an enticing option because of our pain. The only reason we would choose evil or be tempted to choose evil is because we're hurting somehow. And the choice of evil is a way to make the hurting stop, right? Like, oh, I'm hungry, so let me steal. Or I've been offended, so let me attack or kill. Or I've been wounded, you know, in a relationship, so let me be unfaithful, right? Like the evil is like it's like a palliative to feel better at some level, right? And so we have to have pain because it's the only thing that actually gives us a compelling choice between a good or an evil response. There's really no nobility in doing good when it's not a challenge to do so. The nobility comes in choosing good, even when evil seems like a short-term compelling option, right? And so that's where I think this pain, so the frame of my question, the question I'm trying to get to is, I think for a lot of people that don't get stuck on the 180-degree part of the circle, the people that actually do round out and come back to source or back to freedom or whatever, it's people that have that bottoming out, that they have enough pain in their life that it forces existential questions and it forces that duality, that sort of like Jungian choice to go to good and then have to ask why, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the challenge is, I think some people, the world is a great numbing agent. Like the world we live in does a great job of making the unenlightened or the unexamined life so busy and so superficially sort of rewarding with dopamine and materialism that like you can get by without ever asking the questions. Yeah. And so the people that ask the questions, and I would imagine, I would love to hear if this is true, that at some point you had enough pain in your life or something that was hard enough or shocking enough that pulled you in the direction of asking deeper questions. I know that was true for me. My question is, how do you get people to want to ask those questions without having to force them into the crucible and suffer? Because it's like, I'm trying to get people to want to go deeper, but not have to suffer like I did to care.
Yeah, I think maybe that's a process. I would say, I don't know if it's completely possible, 100, everything is possible, but I think part of the process of life is there will be pain. As in the human experience, pain is inevitable. Pain is part of the process. There is death, there is birth, there is heartbreak. This is just part of the human experience. And so, like, I think maybe how it happens is someone like you, me, those listening, we evolve through our learning, through our growth, through our heartbreak. We evolve, we learn. And perhaps through our own embodiment, our own awareness, our own evolution, we are able to transmit that lesson and example to our children, right? And as a result, our children are held in a more deeper context. Our children are raised more consciously with less conditioning. Our children are raised with more compassion, love, and understanding. We're able to project a seeing of who our children are, like I see who you are, so that they are more able to then remember. So then the evolution accelerates in the for the next generation. And I think generationally, each generation gets more involved, more enlightened. And there reaches a point where the kids that incarnate into the human experience come in like almost like enlightened beings because of the groundwork that has happened in each generation. And so then your great-great-great-grandchildren don't have to go through the level of suffering that you and I went through, because there's been evolution, there's been learning, there's been, ancestral healing that has happened. You've done the work that your parents and their parents and that didn't do to heal pain patterns, addictions, forgiveness. And so that healing then transmits through the ancestral lineage, so that by the time your children, your grandchildren, etc., come along, there's been so much healing that also they don't have to carry the momentum of, let's say, karma, the momentum of unresolved pain that has been passed down through generations, because you did the therapy, you did the work, you did the healing. And so that doesn't have to continue. Whatever was unresolved in your ancestral lineage doesn't have to continue. And so then I think, yes, then generations in the future don't have to go through the suffering. Now, that's more of an individual family level. And so that's why I think we all have a responsibility to do our healing. We all have a sacred responsibility to do the work. And I think if we want to make a difference for the planet, if we want to really make an impact on the planet, it's not just going out there and changing the world, it's changing our own psychology, change the personal development, changing our own emotions, healing ourselves, because that will have an impact on the planet. Is suffering absolutely necessary as a path? No. The challenge is because some of our own egoic attachments and identifications are so strong, that some of us, the only way that we're going to let go of our own holding on and surrender that and release that so that we can allow more grace, allow more divine help, divine support, more God, ego easing God out, to really allow some more opening in our lives is through intense suffering. Because many times it's only that intense suffering that cracks open that level of holding of our own sense of separation, sense of separate self, sense of control. It's only sometimes intense suffering, intense heartbreak, intense pain that actually can do that, not just a nice little encouragement. And so I think that's the path. Is it necessary? No, but is it necessary? If we're holding on tightly, it's possibly the case.
And there's a great Jungian quote, and I'm going to mess it up a little bit, but essentially it's to the extent of it is that no tree can extend upwards to heaven whose roots have not descended downwards to hell.
Yeah.
And I think about that a lot, that like, is there a way to shortcut the pain part of it? And everybody I mean, C.S. Lewis wrote The Problem of Pain. Like, everybody grapples with this question. But yeah, I haven't really found a way around it. I think for the most part,
I think we can shortcut it by let's say the personal development. Maybe not just going into the depths of hell or the jungle by oneself, right? And reading and help and support and coaching. Then maybe we can get some help to navigate it. But I think we're all gonna have to go through it, which is why I think we incarnated to go through this experience. It's part of the simulation. It's part of this dimension. To me, is not meant to be utopia.
Right.
It's not meant.
I agree with that.
It's not meant to. We were in some kind of heavenly utopia, whatever dimension you believe in. So we incarnated in order to learn, to grow, to evolve. And how we learn, grow, and evolve is through some kind of resistance. And so we live in a limited three-dimensional reality. We live in a three-dimensional limited reality. We live in a world of interdependent polaric opposites. That's the nature of life. Up, down, black, white, good, bad, left, right, fat, thin, rich, poor, yin, yang. It's the Tao. It's the nature of things. It's never going to be, we live in duality. It's just physics, Yeah. And so I think when we can understand that and not fight that, well, it shouldn't be this way. It's plus and minus. It's physics. When we can really understand the nature of this three-dimensional reality, which is all about duality, which creates friction, and make peace with that, then we don't look for, let's say, heaven in this dimension. We don't look for utopia in this dimension. We don't look for perfection in this dimension. We understand that this is the realm of imperfection that we are learning how to navigate in order to have the limitation and the friction inside of, so that we can perhaps learn to become masters inside of limitation, to gain mastery inside of the limitation, to remember who we are inside of this limitation. And so then we can change. Then the freedom comes not just by manipulating this reality. The freedom comes by shifting your relationship with this reality. Because now you're no longer fighting, and that's the freedom. The freedom in then you bring heaven on earth. That's but the real freedom is inside of you. The real freedom is in the depth of your being. We've been talking in different sort of spiritual, religious things. The kingdom of heaven is within you. It doesn't say the kingdom of heaven is in Gucci, is in Prada, is out there in the world. It's the kingdom of heaven is within you. And when we realize that, then we can go into the world knowing, like Mandela knew, I am freedom. The freedom is my being. The freedom is my true nature. The freedom is the transcendental dimension of what I am. Then I can go into life from that place of freedom. And then when we also accept the nature of duality, then I think we become more powerful to affect change in the world. Because if we accept what it is, it doesn't mean, well, there's people getting killed and there's children being taken advantage of. Well, it's what it is. No, we can understand that there's always going to be a realm of duality, interdependent polaric opposites. And rather than kind of meeting the world with resistance or againstness, like that shouldn't be happening, we can meet the world with a sense of it is happening, it's going to happen. And from a place of, let's say, more neutrality, we can go into the world and still affect change, but not go against something. And I think when we're able to do that, we stop reinforcing the very thing we're trying to change. When we come at something from a place of resistance, it shouldn't be this way, I'm mad that it's this way, it shouldn't be, it's wrong, it's bad, it's then we actually tend to reinforce the thing we're trying to change.
You know, it's interesting you say that. I saw an interview, I'm trying to remember who the interview was with, or who was the interviewer, but the interviewee, it was just a clip, and it was with Grimes, who's the artist, sure. Formerly Elon Musk's girlfriend. And maybe still his girlfriend. Yeah, actually, I don't know. I don't presume to know these things, but she said something that, oh man, it hit me. She said, we are so, as a society, as individuals, just as a generalization, we are so focused on killing what we hate, getting rid of what we hate, trying to suppress or eradicate what we hate, instead of preserving what we love or growing what we love. Like, we have this sort of oppositional way of, you know, to be the change in the world, we have to go out and we have to, you know, snuff out racism and snuff out ideologies we don't agree with and snuff out and we're trying to snuff everything out. Instead of just expanding what we love. Expanding, yeah. Because we're never going to be able to. It's physics. It's like life and death. Well, let's get rid of death. There'll be no life. Left and right. Well, without left. Oh, let's put it this way. Mother Teresa, if there were no sick, and I don't want sick people, but if there were no sick people, there would have been no Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa was an interdependent, polaric, complementary, you know, opposite to that. Mm-hmm. And so this is the nature of life. That's why in the yin yang symbol, in the black, you see a white dot. Right. In the white, you see a black dot, because they're interrelated in this dimension, you know. And so when we can embrace that, I think then we learn to be free in it. Then, you know, lockdowns, okay, you know, pandemics, lockdowns, to me, it's like, okay, freedom's being taken away, but this is the realm of limitation. Agree with it, politically don't, regardless, I think we can then understand that we can use every experience of life for our soul's growth and evolution, because this dimension is a realm of limitation. And I think when we understand the simulation and the game, then we're like, how can I really access the true freedom inside of this simulation, you know, and start to play inside of this wild and amazing, you know, crazy and beautiful and insane and incredible movie that is life, that we are all characters in this, you know, epic movie. I'm glad you referred to it as a game, and you talked about playing. One of the things I really, I teach it, but I really try to almost obsessively get clear on it for myself, and clarity from the standpoint of purity, where it's like, I'm not lying to myself, but I'm really owning my truth, whatever it is, without judgment. Is what this is a game. How am I keeping score? Am I keeping score with money? Am I keeping score with relationships? And am I keeping score with quantity of relationships, quality of relationships, depth of relationships, relationships as measured through transformational impacts, like, and so on, right? Am I keeping score with my influence in the world, my social media footprint? Like, there's a lot of different ways to keep score, but to gamify life and get really clear on, like, you can't have, like, you know, it'd be like watching a basketball game and at the end of the game being like, okay, well, who won? Was it the team that had the fewest fouls, the fewest turnovers, the most 3-pointers, the most points, the most free throws, like the best defense? No, you got to pick a metric to grade yourself by, right? And like, how are people keeping score in this world is such a profound question. I just wanted to say that. That's not really a question. I just wanted to say that. I want to ask you the question though. Obviously your book is about surrender. Yeah. The magic of surrender. And I think you've contextualized that a lot with everything you've said, and this idea of surrendering into the the constraints of the game and the simulation, right? Like we can't change it, surrender into it. But how do you coach people to balance the art, let's call it the art of surrender, with the urgency of change, of making change?
Yeah, well, first, I'll take a minute, because I think the definition of surrender has to be expanded. Okay. Because I think there is a misconception in our culture that surrender is passive, that surrender is giving up, that surrender is just lying there doing nothing. It's just waiting,
or that it's the loss of freedom.
Or surrender is the loss of freedom. Surrender means you won't manifest what you want. It's being a victim, that you're going to get less in life. And I'm actually saying no. Surrender is the most powerful thing that you can do. It's the password to freedom, and it's the key to your next level. And if you look at all of the great ones, Jesus, Buddha, Gandhi, Muhammad Ali, Bruce Lee, Mandela, but look, even Elon Musk, love him or hate him, the dude, I think, surrendered, $200 million in PayPal.
Yep.
He felt a calling. I'm going to invest everything. How many of us would invest everything? Everything. I know. That is an act of surrender.
Yeah, like if anybody doesn't know that story, I want them to ask themselves, if you sold your company, I wouldn't. If for $200 million in your 20s, would you move into a 1-bedroom apartment, live off of ramen noodle soup, and put all your money into the next thing?
I probably wouldn't, but he felt a calling. And so I just want people to get like, in surrendering, what if you didn't get less, but you got more? And so to me, I just want to contextualize that surrender is the process of allowing, the process of opening. It's taking the control. It's when we stop trying to control every little thing in our life. Control is really an illusion, a master addiction. It's when we stop trying to force life to fit our limited idea of how we think it should be and manipulate everything. It's when we let go of who we think we should be, the idea, and how we think life should be, so that we can truly be open and available. And what surrender is, like Elon Musk demonstrated, that Mandela demonstrated, like Jesus demonstrated, that Martin Luther King demonstrated, it's feeling the deepest truth. The deepest impulse, the deepest truth of what is most authentic, what your soul is trying to express, what your essence is trying to express, what God is trying to express, if you believe in God, the deepest impulse of what is seeking to express through you beyond your mind and beyond your conditioning, and aligning yourself with that. Now you're in alignment. And when you align yourself with that, then you can align your actions and your thoughts and your strategy and your money and your marketing with that. And then you take action. And that might mean you work 20 hours a day, because now you're surrendered to what's most true. You're surrendered to what's most authentic. It might mean, maybe for a coach, for instance, maybe there's a message that you're like, my soul is guiding me to speak about this, but shit, maybe my audience won't want to hear. I'm afraid, and saying, you know what? This is where I need to go. This is what's scary. And it's the willingness to be true to the depth of your own soul's integrity and align to that and live that, give 100% without getting attached. It's not the action that's an issue. It's the attachment to the goal that we think is the goal that blocks our surrender. And sometimes we get so attached to what we think the goal should be that we don't realize that in that attachment, we're limiting the universe, we're limiting life, we're limiting the infinite. And because from the perspective of the ego, we're not able to see the infinite possibilities of life. We're not able to see the infinite magic of what the universe is seeking to do. We just think that what we want is what we want, but many times we're not aware that what we sometimes think we want is just what we think we want based on who we think we are. And so the old paradigm is all about just get clear on what you want and go for it, and then we get attached to it. But it can be limiting. To me, that's an old ego-based model of manifesting. Nothing wrong with it. I think it has a place. I'm inviting people to a more infinite game versus a finite game. And that infinite game is surrender, which is asking a different question or feeling a different question. The question becomes, what is it that life is seeking to express through me, the most authentic impulse? And so it's not just, what do I want?
Can you say that? Can you say that again? Because it's just such a great question.
So the old question is, well, what do I want? What do I want? What do I want? But the I is often limited. Sometimes our goals are projections of unmet needs from childhood. Yep. So the real question becomes, so I'm not saying don't ask that. I'm just saying don't get limited and stuck in that. And then ask yourself a bigger question. What is it that life is seeking to express? What is it that my soul is seeking to express? Then align with that. Then create your business and your strategy and your next level with that, with no limitations.
And I like that you said through me.
Yes.
Not of me, not from me, not for me, through me.
Yeah. And that's surrender. It's surrendering to what's true. Because many times we feel something, go there, and then we resist. And
how do you tell the difference between, and I have my own answer, but I want to hear yours. How can you identify the difference between a compulsion, let's call it a compulsion, or a drive that's based on our egoic, needs, call them our basic human needs, right? Trying to make up for unmet needs as children, as adults, kind of the Bradshaw model, as opposed to our higher calling, or our through calling, or whatever the alternative is. How do you tell the difference in your body?
I think there's a feeling frequency that it just feels a little different. Sometimes it doesn't always come in like some big, loud, like, oh, right. Sometimes I found it's very gentle, like a gentle breeze. There's a movement. It's like something's nudging me, and it can almost not make sense. And what gets us in trouble is the mind starts going, nah, that's not even serious. So we can almost miss it. But many times it will feel like a gentle nudging in this direction. And many times I found that nudging will often not make sense to your mind. It won't make sense to your mind.
If I could add to that, it also one of my indicators is, does it make sense to other people?
Yeah.
A lot of times, if people are telling me such and such is a good idea, I tend to doubt it.
Yeah, many times
when they tell me I'm nuts is when I'm probably onto something.
Many times when people say, why are you going there? Why are you doing that? I will, if I'm really honest, I will, and I'm not attached to being intelligent, I will often have to say, I'm really not sure why. I just have a feeling. I can't tell you why I'm turning left. Just something is guiding me to turn left. And that's often when you know that the guidance is arising from the unconditioned dimension of your being, from your soul, from your spirit, from that deeper part of you. Then that's when you're tapped into something magical.
So can I ask you something? Was it some such feeling or impulse that got you into what you're doing today with your career?
I will say that, it wasn't a specific moment, because I was born into a environment of spirituality and mystical sort of opening. My father was a healer. And so I grew up seeing my first memories, I grew up seeing blind people see and deaf people hear. My first memory was seeing a crippled woman crawling on the floor. She picks up the sand that my father walks on. He had no idea, wipes it on her face and stands up. And so he built 300 churches in Ghana, West Africa, hundreds of thousands of followers. He had a huge church in London. I was supposed to take over his churches, and I left. For me, a big thing was I left. I was ordained at 14, and I left everything when I was 18 years old. And that was a moment of me trusting my soul, of saying, my entire life has been planned out for me, all these expectations from my father and hundreds of thousands of people. Something doesn't feel aligned for my soul, nothing wrong with what he's doing, but it's calling me to do it in a different way, to express in a different way. And I went against everything that everybody expected, which was huge at the time. And I just followed my soul. And I had the conversation with my father, left, because I looked into my future and I saw I could be successful by everyone else's standards. But if I don't have myself, and if I don't have my integrity, what kind of success is that? And I left everything, and it was scary and it was terrifying. But what I really believe is when you surrender and when you follow, which took action, right? Surrender took me taking action, having a conversation and moving in a direction. I believe that when you truly surrender to what's true, you will always, and I have seen this and proven it in my life, you will always end up in the right place, even though the route that you take may not always be the one you most expect. And so I had this conversation with my father. I said, I'm not taking over. Cut a long story short, I end up winning months later a green card, literally in the lottery. And that enabled me to come to the US. Kid with 18, no college degree, no money, no support, no connections in the US, not great prospects. And I end up winning a green card in the lottery. That enabled me to come to the US, $800, 2 suitcases, and a dream of going into the field of self-help. And I went and found mentors and teachers. Jim Rohn, Zig Ziglar, Tony Robbins, Brian Tracy, Louise Hay. I mean, all the folks I'd read about when I was a teenager, went and found them, and then kind of things evolved from there.
What an amazing story. Well, one thing I have learned is that when you have meaningful conversations about the most important things in life, time flies by.
That's true.
And I'm actually shocked to see that our time has completely flown by. Like, I feel like we could talk. I feel like we're just getting warmed up. Like we could talk for like 4 more hours or something. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's not an option though. Maybe we can have you back. I'd love to keep.
For sure.
I honestly am kind of at a point in my life where these are like the only conversations I'm even interested in having.
Nice.
I don't want to sound like a jerk, but like, I don't actually care how your day is. I want to talk about what matters, you know?
Let's do it. Anytime. We'll come back anytime.
But okay. So if people want to follow your journey, go deeper in your world, hire you, learn from you and so forth, where should they go?
Yeah, a couple of things. You know, the book, The Magic of Surrender, is just now out, depending on people listen to this, May the 3rd on paperback. Go to Amazon, get the book. I give you a roadmap to surrender. Also, May the 14th, I'm doing a very special live event virtually. It's called Reinvent. It's really how to reinvent yourself, let go of the old version of yourself, connect to your true power, share your gifts with the world. So if you get the book from May the 3rd onwards till May the 12th, you can go to www.Kute, Kute Blackson, BLACKSON.com/reinvent seminar. Just enter your name, your email, and your receipt for the paperback version. You get access to a bunch of free gifts and the May 14th live event, 2 hours deep dive. My main website is KuteBlackson.com. You can find out my info there. If people want to go for a really deep dive, my favorite thing to do is 12 days in Bali. I take 20 people to Bali and we dive deep 20 hours a day and really help you uncondition yourself and go to that next level. www.boundlessblissbali.com.
Cool. We'll put all those links in the description. So anybody that heard that, just go check the description for the podcast or the video, and there'll be clickable links there. Kute, this has been wonderful. Are you on social media?
Yeah, social media. Instagram, Kute Blackson. Say hi. Facebook, cool. Kute Love Now.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being a guest on Unlock Your Potential. Wonderful conversation. I appreciate the work you do in the world.
Pleasure.
If you loved that episode, then you're definitely going to love this one.
What you are seeing in your reality is what you have previously thought about and brought into your reality.